Yeah, we are. Hi everyone, namaste and a big warm welcome to Dr. Vishwanath Mubina, our supporters, members, and everybody whoever, wherever in the world they are watching us. Asha Australia Foundation has and will always be supporting our seniors in any way we can. During COVID, we've got a lot of Bollywood music daily. We got Zoom, yoga weekly sessions, Antashri, every Saturday we have something. Fortnightly we have the health talks, and alternative Saturday we started the mini concerts. And we are hoping to have a big concert on the 2nd of January, which will give you the details. But the good news is, yes, we are opening our serious social groups. So we've got 3 groups starting in November, and we'll celebrate Diwali in West Ryde, Wentworthville, and Crow's Nest. So please watch out. We'll send you the information. We'll do it COVID safe. And in Wentworth, Mark Taylor, the MP, is coming. And all we want to do is celebrate Diwali, celebrate life, and just be happy that we are alive. Now, a big welcome to Dr. Vishwanathan, who is very well-known cardiologist. But more than that, we really appreciate as a human being who really wants to serve. And we are very honored and humbled to have Dr. Vishwanathan, and a big thank you to Mubina also, who is always sportive and who's a nutritionist. And she's going to, at the end of the talk, tell you how you can keep your heart healthy as well. So I'm going to, without taking much of your time, Dr. Sundar, will you like to welcome Dr. Vishwanathan, please? Thank you, Dr. Sundar.
Thank you, Bijwanda. Thank you very much. Welcome, Dr. Vishwanathan. Mubina, thank you for your help, and Prabhu for your support. Dr. Vishwanathan is a interventional cardiologist who has extensive skills in performing coronary angiography and angioplasty procedure utilizing both femoral and radial artery. That's a specialized, very special technique, which not many doctors can do that. Only special cardiology can do that, because you're trained in Canada, in India, and also in Westmead. All 3 places were trained for all these things, which enables him to do all the cardiology procedure at SANS and Bella Vista. You can go on if you go to Google, go to Google and see Dr. Venkatachalam Vishwanathan. You can see the profile. He's not only interested in cardiology, he's performed music, he's got yoga, he reads books, he sings, writing poetry, and he believes in positive thinking and truly works with the heart to other people. Thank you, Vishwanathan, and leave it to you for your talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sundar. Can I request other people that we can't see their faces? Even if people, please keep it mute, but put your video on. We'd love to see your faces. And Dr. Vishwanathan, welcome, and all yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me, and it really gives me great pleasure to be with all of you and share my knowledge and try and help the community in getting us a better heart and make us feel better, do better, and look after our heart better. So this talk is called Healthy Heart or Heart Health. I thought these are facts about the heart, so why not call it Infactuation of the Heart? So that we talk about all the facts of the heart and we still feel lured into listening to it and understand the heart better. Now, I must say that the heart has been a topic for many poets, movies with both Bollywood, Hollywood, everywhere, and we speak about the heart a lot. But I must tell you, and obviously you know about this, I'm sure, that the heart likes to hide. It doesn't like to come out, and its emotions, just as its emotions, its other features, it tries to hide very well. So what we have to do, we have to play a detective, be a good detective and find what's going on with the heart and what it does. That's why the role of many tests. I'll try and keep it simple. I'll go on to my first slide. If I can, let me see, 1 second. Yeah, there we go. So we'll start with a poem, as I like to write poetry. And here I am today to talk to you about the concept of true wealth, the wealth we earn lifelong to keep the heart in good health. We shall discuss all matters of the heart in detail, play detective to see where heart ailments prevail. We shall endeavor to uproot all the hidden causes, ensure there are no heart attacks, flutters, or pauses. specifically discuss issues about diet and lifestyle, controlling anger, weight, and stress is indeed worthwhile.
Wow, very good. Very good.
Let's take on hypertension, cholesterol, and diabetes with our noble hearts, enable lifelong joy and peace. Let's burn away the cigarette rather than burn it. That burns our arteries away. Let's burn some calories instead, running the fitness way. Let's discuss prevention and treatment of heart ailments. Let's keep our hearts on track and avoid derailments. Let's work for our heart that works hard for us long term, and let's keep it protected from fat, sugar, stress, and any germ. When I say germ, we're talking about infective endocarditis. So basically, there's a lot of things about the heart, very difficult to fit it all in one lecture, but we'll see what we can do about understanding the heart a little better. So every day, our heart creates enough energy to drive a truck for 20 miles. Can you believe that? So there's a lot of myth about the heart, many facts about the heart. Let's try and see how much we can unravel today. So the myth is that fat deposits happen at old age. By the way, I don't ask anyone how old they are because all of us are young until proven otherwise, right? It's a matter of just the number sometimes. Although sometimes we do see a lot of things happen as we start getting wiser and wiser in terms of the numbers of age going up. So the fact is that actually atherosclerosis or the fat deposition starts from 2 years of age. Now we don't call 2-year-old children as old people, do we? So basically it starts right from early on in age. So we have to look after our body long time before it manifests as to what's going on with the heart. We have many medical terms here, so I might use just a few terms, but I'll try and keep it as simple as possible for all of you to understand. So it starts with what's called as formation of foam cells on the extreme left, if you can see, then goes on to what's called as fatty streak, intermediate lesion, atheroma, fibrous plaque, and complicated lesion or rupture of the plaque. And I'll show that to you in a few minutes with actually a model of the heart I've brought in to show you, and also a model of the artery of the heart and the layers of the heart. So if you can see on the down screen, I mean, the bottom of the screen, it says first decade. Right from the first decade, we start developing these foam cells and fatty streaks. So our body is trying quite hard to love the fat and the cholesterol. So we have to fight a lot more to make it healthier. Now, a little bit word about the heart. So all of us have to die one day. We all leave this world one day. But when we leave the world, most of us leave because of a very funny, it's not fun as in funny, but it's a funny rhythm called ventricular fibrillation. And that's what we all die of. And many of us, as we live more and more, like we live longer and longer, we find that heart failure seems to be taking over most of the heart problems. And a simple way, I always tell my students, I teach university students, I tell my students that the best way to understand the heart is to actually get a good history from the patient and examine the patient carefully. Then comes the test, because tests are many and you don't know what test to choose. So on the screen, if you can see the lady there, you can see the engorged veins on the neck. That's a very strong telltale sign that the heart is not doing well. The veins are engorged, the veins are pulsating. That's the earliest sign. So I'm not expecting you to come to me, say you've got this heart failure, but what I'm trying to say is that sometimes it's just a look at the patient we can make out, but many times not. So then we need a more test. So I'll tell you some bit about the tests we do. But if you're on the screen, if you have a look, that's the look of a normal ECG on the left, and there's abnormal ECG on the right. I'm not going to make you all into cardiologists, but what I'm trying to say is that when we do stress test, we look at this little line on the left of the tall peak. The tall peak comes from the bottom chamber of the heart called the ventricle. Now, are you able to see me on the screen and the heart in my hand by any chance?
Not yet.
Can we do that? Or should I keep all that for the end? I can do it for the end.
Okay.
All right. So the bottom chamber of the heart manifests itself on the ECG by that tall spike you can see. And the top chamber of the heart comes up as a little dome there. Now it's like a happy harmony between the top chamber and the bottom chamber. So the top followed by the bottom. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's the way the heart goes our entire life. It's amazing. It's really a height of technology that nature provides us with. And on this, if we find these two lines at the same line, same horizontal level, that's normal. But when they dip a bit lower or go a bit higher, that's when we start getting worried that something is not quite right with the blood supply of the heart. which amounts to a heart attack. The facts we discussed today are, what are the cardiac risks? What do we know about high blood pressure or hypertension? What about the sugars? What about smoking? What about exercise? How much is the diet going to play a role in our heart behavior? And that obviously I'll leave it to our expert speaker towards the end. We have something called atrial fibrillation. We see more and more of this. That's where the top chamber we spoke about earlier, coming as a little dome, disappears. And instead of nice contraction of the top chamber, we get a very bizarre rhythm. It's a funny rhythm. It's a chaotic rhythm that comes from the top chamber called atrium, and hence the name atrial fibrillation. It's not normal. It usually does not kill a person straight away, but gives a lot of discomfort. More importantly, because the top chamber is not squeezing anymore, it gives a chance for the top chamber to clot, have a clot, and that clot can result in a stroke. And that's something none of us want to ever have. We'll discuss that a little more in details later on. So moving on to this next, it's about the coronary artery disease. That's basically the blockage of the artery, which I'll show you towards the end of my talk. What are these arteries? What do they look like? What happens when something goes wrong? And the way we fix it is either by angioplasty and a stent or by bypass surgery. And of course, medications remain the mainstay. We have to give medications long term. And that's something patients often ask me, doctor, I'm feeling fine now. Can you stop the tablets? And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, please don't, because that's where the basic support line comes. You have to take medications, and whatever we do in addition is a bonus, but not the main thing. Main thing is medications, lifestyle, so on and so forth. I'll touch a little bit about what we know about the aortic valve and mitral valve and what we can do these days. And last but not the least, about the pacemakers, which often we all get to ask our cardiologists. When you see a cardiologist, one of the questions you often ask is, do I need a pacemaker? People are talking about a pacemaker. So I'll just try to throw light on each of this as best as I can, but knowing that it's humongous, huge topic and can't be finished in 1 hour, but I'll try my best. Now, looking at what was happening more than 10 years, so it's about 20 years back, 10 years back, maybe longer. We've been doing this research for a long time. We're looking at 2010 statistics, but we've got statistics from long back. There's something called a Framingham risk score that came up many years back. So we all knew that there's a certain association of risk factors and the heart. Now look at the global leading risk factors for death. That's 10 years from 10 years back. High blood pressure was leading quite high. And you're talking about these numbers in millions, okay? So high blood pressure, even secondhand smoking. So passive smoking, partner smoking, friend smoking, smoking, sitting in a bar that's involving people who are smoking, diet low in fruits, alcohol use, household air pollution, high glucose. So you don't have to be a diabetic. You could be just having little high fasting glucose, glucose intolerance, insulin resistance, so many terms to know, right? High BMI, so body mass index, all of us have heard about this. Everybody is now moving towards fitness. They get the Fitbit. So this is all the risk we have, high sodium diet, so on and so forth. You can see the whole screen there. One of the things I want you to look at is diet low in fiber. So diet is a very integral part of our management. We often advise everybody good diet, and who better can explain to us the diet but a dietitian. And I must admit, I myself paid a visit to a dietitian because there's something all of us can't cover. It's a specialty by itself. So I can give you guidelines, but the best person to discuss would be with your dietitian. The best way to go about seeing a dietitian is by asking your GP for a referral. And they form a very important part of our team, just like we have people in the rehabilitation team, which I'll touch upon a bit later on. So let's look at the burden of cardiovascular disease in Australia. We're not talking about us, we're talking about the whole world, India, UK, anyway, US. So, but we have data from one country for sure, and that accounts for over 1/3 of all the deaths in Australia. Estimated 1.4 million, about 7% of the population have disability because of cardiovascular disease. When we say vascular disease, we talk about stroke, we talk about renal artery involvement, we talk about peripheral gangrene. So it's basically any vasculature supplying any important or vital organ of the body. Cardiovascular disease, admittedly, you all know that when you go to see a cardiologist, first you make sure your purse is full, right? So the most expensive group of conditions in terms of direct healthcare costs, everything we do in cardiology costs a lot. In 2007, cardiovascular disease was recorded as a primary cause of death for about almost close to 50,000 Australians, and accounted for 16% of overall disease burden in Australia in 2010, as I just mentioned earlier. And most of the burden comes also from premature death. So young people dying, they are the working lot, they're the working population, they are the breadwinners. And if they die, you can imagine what happens to the economy, what happens to the country. And about 26% of total years of life lost. And that's apparently only secondary to cancer, which is 34%. So taking away coronary artery disease, cardiovascular disease completely, we can't do that. I don't think we can, but why not remain positive? Why don't we think we can do it? Because everybody has to move one stone and then we start moving several boulders later on and we move a mountain. That's where we progress. So taking away cardiovascular disease totally will amount to 7 years of life added. And that's not a small number we are talking about. Let's start with risk assessment. Any job we do, we have to look at the risk. We open the door, we look left, we look right, and we move on. We cross the street, we look at the signal. So everything we have to look at, what is the risk involved? So what's the risk involved with the heart? Well, you be born as a male, that's a risk. And that's not all. Nowadays, we find that now women will be applauding in the audience, and I'm happy for everybody to be happy, but unfortunately, we are finding a lot of women involved. There's a lot of atypical features. Women were always assuming that they're protected. So this title does say men are more than women. That is true. I can't deny that. But in terms of actual statistics, number of women affected are going higher, higher, and higher. And I'm seeing it in my rooms. Women come with atypical symptoms. Women come with delayed presentation. Sometimes we don't pick it up. So a lot of awareness needs to be established. Yes, definitely men more than women, but even women in the reproductive age group are not immune to heart disease. We have to be careful. Get screened, please get screened. Age more than 55 years in men, more than 65, that I think is going to be disappearing soon because we, as I said, younger and younger women we see getting involved. A lot of stress, lifestyle, genes, whatnot. Smoking, we speak about that in a few slides from now. High cholesterol, now we have a lot of discussion about this. These are all cumulative risk factors. I must emphasize, this is not about one risk factor. We see more and more and more, we will probably see more and more. And there are some people, unfortunately, we don't find any obvious risk factors, but there has to be something. Maybe 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now, we'll be more aware of what's going on. But there are definite risk factors. There are some unknown risk factors. We are smart as doctors. We say they are idiopathic, which means we don't know what they are. But we don't say that we don't know. We say they are idiopathic. So a lot of factors are still being researched into: genetics, stress, role of depression, role of obstructive sleep apnea syndrome, role of inflammation, infection, homocysteine levels, lipoprotein small a, now this horrible COVID that's coming. So many HIV infection, any viral infection, a lot of things are being revealed day by day. Fasting blood glucose. Now, once upon a time, diabetes was the biggest threat. It remains a threat still. I'm not saying no, but fasting glucose, anything above normal, we get a bit healthily paranoid. I'm saying healthily paranoid because we have to be focusing on these things. We could not ignore. We have, when I sit in my chamber, in my rooms, I have to wear my paranoid pair of glasses. Everybody who's coming to my room has to return being as sure as they can be that they are fine. And that's my job. That's my duty. Therefore, we have to screen. Abnormal glucose tolerance test, which is all a topic by itself, high BMI, obesity, apple-shaped obesity or pear obesity, central obesity, waist circumference. We all talk about it. We are aware of it, but we have to act. Family history of premature disease. So people who's young, I mean, I'm talking about immediate family members first, and obviously next generation as well. So basically, immediate family, siblings, father, mother, anybody who has had unexpectedly problems at young age, you have to be a bit cautious. We should put that as one risk factor. So we discussed this earlier. Why do we have to discuss this? Because cardiovascular risk is the first step in assessing yourself and getting a clear idea of where we stand, what we do, how do we modify our risk, how do we get better, how do we live longer, how do we live happier. In Australia, 90% of adult population has at least one modifiable risk factor. What do I mean by that? We can change. We can definitely get better. So there is hope ahead. However bad heart attack be, heart disease be, there's always hope. There's always something positive hiding. We have to search for it. We will find it. Many risk factors for cardiovascular disease can be modified. We have already proved it. Many scientific studies have shown that, and we can always get that better. And we already discussed that earlier. I won't repeat that. So let's look at the first commonest thing we talk about, hypertension. Some of us believe it's only white coat. I've stopped wearing white coat, as you can see, but jokes apart, we all know that hypertension is a burden. whether it's just white coat or not, even white coat hypertension or so-called stress-related, doctor-related, medical office-related hypertension also should be looked into. They are higher risk. So the point to note is that many of them are not diagnosed. Some of them are not diagnosed or diagnosed but not treated, or some of them are just partially treated. So we have to look into every aspect. Are you taking medicines? Yes. Are you taking medicines adequate enough? Are you taking medicines that are suiting you? Are there any complications? Are there side effects? Have we hit the targets? And if we have hit the targets, are we continuing to maintain the targets? You're not going, oh, my blood pressure is good, let me try stopping it. I mean, unless the blood pressure drops low or we are getting side effects of medications, we are not doing that. So yes, Google helps. We can Google, but we are sitting here. We are live. You can talk to us. You can call us, and we can discuss. There's always room for discussion with everybody. So we have got to be careful not to look at these things as something that can be ignored. Now, does it matter whether my blood pressure is 130/80 or 110/70 or 140/90? Yes, studies have shown that. Although we obviously know it's something 210, 120, something significantly high or really out of the range, that's not good. But even subtle levels of high blood pressure over a period of time makes a difference. And as you can see on the screen, reduction of even 2 millimeters of blood pressure mercury lower, that lowers the heart cardiac risk quite significantly. So it reduces the risk of stroke, reduces the risk of dying, heart attack, and everything. So you can see small changes makes a big difference. So this is why we have to discuss this. You can look at all those things you never want to look at, or if you look at, you assume it belongs to somebody else. It's not me, it's somebody else. They're talking about that on the newspaper, on the TV screen, it comes up on Facebook. That's not me. Why not? It could be us. That's why we need to look at it carefully, including myself. I cannot tell my patients to exercise and not exercise. I cannot tell my patients to eat carefully and start eating sweets. So I'm a human, so it involves me. And you can look at all the horrible things on the screen. You can look at the brain at the top with an intracranial or intra-brain bleed. You can look at all the clots sitting on the left screen in the middle, the eyes at the bottom. You can see the eyes are not showing good changes. The one on the left is showing hemorrhages or bleeding and certain other things called cotton wool spots. And you can see some changes from high blood pressure on the eyes. So eyes are really a reflective, eyes reflect health as well. So eyes are sometimes a window to look into the heart as well. Now the right shows you the heart right there. It's a heart with a clot in the artery at the front. And the troublemaker is the LAD. Sorry, I didn't say lady, I said LAD, left anterior descending artery. So that's a little clot sitting in the middle of that LAD artery or the left anterior descending artery. And you can see the guy above with a typical appearance. That's called the typical anginal, the fist sign, the Levine sign. That's what we commonly expect. But don't be surprised. You don't have symptoms sometimes. Sometimes it is not chest discomfort. It's some atypical pain. It's some sharp shooting pains. It's breathlessness. It's fatigue. You never know. So it's important to get screened. Now we have many techniques with us, many tools in our toolbox. One of them is ultrasound, and that's what an ultrasound looks like. So basically we actually see the heart, which I'll show you towards the end of the talk of mine. You can look at the heart chambers, you look at the aorta, look at the valve, you can look at the thickness of the heart muscle, pressures in the heart, how the blood flows in the heart. Certainly you can't see the arteries of the heart. You need an angiogram for that, but you can look at any area of the heart that might have been affected and already had a heart attack or some damage to the heart muscle. You can look for aneurysms. You can look at fluid around the heart called pericarditis or pericardial effusion. A whole lot of things can be seen by looking at the ultrasound of the heart. You can measure the chamber size. You can see if it is dilated, if it is normal, not normal. You can look at the rhythm at the bottom, see if it's atrial fibrillation or not. So we have got a lot of tests to do. We can do a stress test. Some of you must have had that already. We make you walk on the treadmill. We make you walk on the treadmill on a slope. It goes up in speed, goes up in intensity. You start gasping for breath. And we are carefully watching you, looking for any symptoms, looking for changes on the ECG, on the ultrasound before and after. This is all about the screening of the heart we are talking about. Look at that on the screen. These are how the arteries of the heart look. Now, you can look at the left of the screen, look at the right. None of them are normal, but the left one is abnormal simply because it doesn't flow beyond the middle. It's completely blocked. That is not at all an unusual sight for me. With someone who comes with a heart attack, we rush him into the cath lab or the laboratory where we do angiograms. We have a look at the arteries, they are blocked. Patients are writhing in pain. They got significant angina, heaviness on the chest. They feel like there are 1,000 elephants sitting on their chest. And this is what we find. We rush in, put in a wire across, put in a balloon, open up the artery, put in a stent, which are like small tubular metallic spring-like structures. We open the artery, patients smile, the nurses smile, we smile, we have it in control. The left screen was the totally blocked artery. The right one is showing that the artery started flowing down. Blood is now flowing across the artery. It's not looking normal. If you can look at the screen, this part is still not normal. That's just a balloon effect. It's not yet having a stent. So that's the story of our lives. This is what we see day in and day out. And that's why we say, please look after your health. Look for blood pressure, look for cholesterol, look for sugar, see what's going on. Now, these are the people who already we know are at very high risk of having heart attacks or strokes or cardiovascular disease. Diabetics with age more than 60, any diabetic with microalbuminuria, which means they're excreting small amount of protein in urine. That's the early stage of kidney damage. Then comes the next stage, advanced kidney failure with or without diabetes, family history of hypercholesterolemia, really high blood pressures, significantly high cholesterol, more than 7.5. Now, there are different units we use in different countries. We use millimoles per liter, you can use milligrams. So basically, extremely high cholesterol is straight away a risk factor for heart disease. We know that. So basically, risk factors. We come to the next, second one. We spoke about high blood pressure, smoking. All I can say is smoking significantly lowers your risk of dying of something else. So therefore, we have got to be careful. Some people come and tell me, oh, doctor, I'm a social smoker. And I'm still confused trying to understand what exactly is neither is it a social behavior to smoke, nor is it good for the society. How does smoking become social? I'm waiting for someone to come and explain that to me. Now, smoking has got all these ingredients and many more. My screen won't fit in. There are more than 50 toxic chemicals, carcinogens, and whatnot sitting there. You can see that, and that's not a lie. That's all real. My screen won't be able to show you more than that. So this is what we are inhaling every day. For what? For making us feel better. The example I give my patients is that, look, smoking is like a friend you found incidentally. You started liking the friend. People who have seen me, if there are patients in the audience, they'll know what I'm saying. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Basically, if you have a friend who comes to you, walks into your house, you enjoy that friendship, you have a cup of tea every day, you go out, you enjoy, it become a routine affair. You can't live without the friend, yes. And then one fine day you find, yes, this friend has been robbing my money from the bank. Every time we have tea, there's a little poison added in the tea, and there's a lot of backstabbing going on. How many of you are going to lift your hand up and say, yes, I want this friend to come up? The doorbell is ringing now. The friend is knocking at the door. How many of you will actually open the door and say, come in, please. I'm here waiting for you. This is what you got to think. It might be difficult. I'm not being judgmental. I understand we all do wrong things. We enter into the era of smoking. It's probably attractive an option. Maybe it's peer pressure. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it makes you feel better. Yes, but what are we looking at in the future? This is what we're looking at. So therefore, the next time you want to touch a cigarette, please think of this. This is his friend who's knocking, a pseudo friend, not a real friend, not at all a friend, far from it, worse than an enemy. Will you open the door? So this is what we keep doing, and this is what the patient thinks. This doctor doesn't know what he's saying. Some of them get angry at me. They may want to leave the room because the doctor has never smoked. He doesn't know what we're doing. But this is what I would say. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You got to make a choice. And I'm here to help. The GPs are here to help. We're all a family. We are caring for each other. We are in a society. So let's talk. Let's see what bothers you. What can we do better? There must be surely some way to get rid of this. If not today, sooner the better. Smoking is a further example of lifetime cumulative damage. So some of the smokers come and tell me, oh, doctor, I just smoke 1 cigarette per day, just one. And it's just 1 cigarette per year. And I'm like, if you're doing 1 cigarette per year, you're probably fine without one. Why not? Because if you have 1 cigarette per day, the increase in the risk of death is by 40%, even if you're a passive smoker. So there you go. Statistics are very clear. Do I need to say more? Smoking from age of 35 to 44, approximately 10 years gone in life. Stopping to smoke from this age recovers 90% of the lost decade, but the survival benefit decreases progressively the later you stop. So that's very, very important. I'm probably stressing on this because I see many innocent victims of smoking, and smoking is such a strong, it captures you, it entices you, it lures you, and then you can't give it up. So we got to think, First thing is to think, right? Unless you think, you can't make a difference. Let's go on to the cholesterol. All of us talk about the cholesterol. All of us do a lot of Googling. But let me tell you one thing. People talk about statins. People are worried about statins. They won't touch statins. Doctor, I've been quite healthy. I've never had any tablet. I don't want to take a tablet either. But what's the other option? The other option is really not good. And once you reach the other option, it takes time to get it better. We can improve it, but it takes time. So therefore, cholesterol studies have shown that reduction of about 21 to 22% reduction in cardiovascular risk is definite, even if you drop 1 millimole of a bad cholesterol called the low density cholesterol or LDL cholesterol. There's another partner to the LDL. It's called triglyceride. There's a good brother there called HDL or high density lipoprotein, which kind of tries to help. The higher the HDL, it's better. But these two stepbrothers are so bad, they really outweigh all the benefits given by a high HDL. So if you have high LDL, and we talk about that a bit later on, we can talk about it anytime, but basically it depends on what level you're talking about. For somebody who's normal, should be less than 2.5, if you're more than 3, you're in trouble. Now Medicare rebates not available, PBS is not available. If you've just got high cholesterol, if you need to take tablets, you need more evidence, you need to show plaques. That's a different issue, but basically normal people less than 2.5, high risk less than 2. I'm talking about millimoles per liter. And if you already got proven or established heart disease, stents, bypass, stroke, peripheral disease, atheromatous aorta, anywhere there's cholesterol you see in the tissue, your target is less than 1.8. Weight loss, we all know that. It's very important. Everything counts, as I said earlier. So 10% weight loss, there's 10 millimeter reduction in your systolic blood pressure, 10% reduction in total cholesterol, 8% rise in the good cholesterol, the good brother, the HDL cholesterol. There's risk reduction in obstructive sleep apnea syndrome, where someone forgets to breathe at night. It's not voluntary, happens on its own, but that's another cardiac risk factor for atrial fibrillation, for heart attacks, for pulmonary hypertension, for high blood pressure. So if you lose weight, even that risk of having issues because of obstructive sleep apnea syndrome, that comes down. Coronary calcium. Everybody who comes to my room wants to have a CT calcium score. So calcium score, yes, calcium is not a friend of the heart. Please remember, it's not the calcium you drink or eat that goes. We need calcium. We need calcium for the bones. We need calcium for the gums, for the teeth. Yes, we need calcium, but the calcium that actually goes and deposits is secondary. It's because of something else. It's not the first event. Something goes wrong with the heart artery. There's deposition of atherosclerosis. There's then buildup of calcium as a second. It's a layer on top. It's a cementing effect. Sometimes calcification may be protective because you've got two kinds of plaques, the dirty plaque or the stable plaque. Now, which one is dirty or unstable? Which one is stable? No one knows. So it's difficult to estimate, but calcium could be a stabilizing effect, but nevertheless, we don't want calcium. So therefore, if you look for calcium on the CT scan, yes, that helps you understand how bad your heart arteries are, but you could be without any calcium. You could be just having fat, cholesterol, foam cells, lipids, inflammatory cells, thrombus, clots. So you could still have abnormal arteries, which is not seen only on a calcium score. So you may be one who may be having chest pain and may need a CT scan, which looks like this. So if you look at the CT scan of the heart, you can see those pretty little arteries, which don't look pretty here anymore because they are narrowed. I'm not sure how many of you can see it. The white is the dye inside the artery, and that narrowing here is the blockage. Same thing as here. So the one you saw before was the coronary angiogram, where we actually go right into the arteries and inject dye or contrast containing iodine or iodine. And this one is basically iodine or iodine into the arteries, but through the vein in the arm. So this is a CT scan related diagnosis. So it's a CT scan showing the arteries of the heart. So you can actually see the aorta. That's the biggest vessel that emerges from the heart. And the arteries of the heart, they're called coronary arteries. Coronary means crown. It's like the head is wearing a crown. The heart's wearing a crown. And you can see 3 different arteries there. This is the main artery of the heart. It divides in 2 branches, which I told you earlier, the LAD, the circumflex on the side. There's the right coronary artery, which looks like the alphabet C. And all these arteries have got branches. So the blockage could be in the main artery, in the front, towards the end of that artery, could be somewhere in a tiny branch. All that makes a difference. Tiny branches usually don't kill a person, usually. And the bigger arteries are obviously going to cause some heart muscle damage as well, of course, apart from pain, and other consequences of heart attack, like having heart failure, irregular rhythm, and whatnot. So this is about a CT scan that we sometimes do based on the indication for that particular patient, which can throw light into what the coronary arteries are doing. Sugar we spoke about briefly. So we all know there's something called diabetes, high sugars more than 7. There's something called impaired glucose tolerance, which we do on a study where we ask someone to drink a sugary drink and check the sugars after 1 hour, 2 hours. And this is a diagnosis for impaired glucose tolerance, impaired fasting glucose. So basically we want sugars as low as possible. Anything not normal, you have to keep a watch. And doctors, all of us can tell you what is right, what is wrong for you, but please screen. Please make sure you get it screened. That's the main essence. Otherwise, we don't want this to happen. We don't want this dirty little clot to block the artery, to block the flow and cause a heart attack somewhere there. We don't want that. None of us want that. Another modality we do is called intravascular ultrasound. So we have the ultrasound into the arteries. We don't do it commonly. It's not done for everyone, but we can do it. And we can look for blockages. We can look for clots. We can look for a tear in the vessel lumen. So a couple of things we can do. So a lot of advanced technology is available. We normally start with an ultrasound or a stress ultrasound called a stress echocardiogram, ECG. These are basic tests. Then the next tier, next level would be, of course, only if necessary, would be a CT scan or an angiogram. And while doing an angiogram, we may need a balloon or an intravascular ultrasound, or there's another thing called rotablation. I don't want to bombard you with knowledge, but basically there's a lot of calcification in the arteries. We can actually burr into the calcium, can get rid of the calcium, make the artery a bit smoother and open up the artery a bit better. This is what we're looking at. This is the actual artery, real artery of a person opened up, and you can see that it's narrowed. It looks a bit aneurysmic or a bit dilated and abnormal here. There's a clot sitting there. These are the clots we're worried about. We don't want that in any one of us anytime. This is what we do. This is what our basic routine is as an interventional cardiologist. We look at the arteries. We look at these narrowing in the arteries. We go in for a balloon, and on the balloon sits the stent. Stents are small, tubular, spring-like structures, like the pen spring, and we open it up. People often ask me, I'm done, doctor, I'm good, feeling good. Can you please take the stent out? For heaven's sake, no, we can't. They stay in the artery and they become a part of the artery. They get accepted, and then tissue grows into the stent. Whether the tissue grows too much into it or not, that's another question. That's something we call in-stent pre-stenosis, which about 5% of us may unluckily have it, but not necessarily. Then obviously there comes the role of giving blood thinners. So that's what we do. We give medications for some reason. Doctor, I'm on too many tablets. I don't want them. So we, of course, have to look into the tablets, make sure we give only the necessary tablets as needed. But if they are needed, they are needed. If they have side effects, we look into it, we talk about it, change over, reduce the dose, reduce the frequency, perhaps not stop unless giving the tablet is more dangerous than not taking it. So that basically it's about a balance. It's all about a balance. So this is what they look at. We look at, this is what they look like. And these are the stents. They become a part of the artery later on because our body grows cell layers into the stent, and they become accepted as a part of our body. If not stent, you may need a bypass. What are these bypass? Bypass are like detours. So basically the surgeon doesn't touch the artery that's blocked. The surgeon doesn't open up. So we are plumbers. We go into the arteries, we open up the tubes. Surgeons are, don't mind me saying this, but they're like butchers. They basically open up. They are nice, pleasant butchers. They're butchers we need. They're good people. No offense meant. We are a team. We are a happy team. That's how we manage the patient. But what they basically do is either they take the left internal mammary artery, which comes from the subclavian artery. It's all part of our own system that nature has given us. We take this artery and we join it as a conduit onto the artery beyond the blockage. So basically, the blood now flows from the heart muscle into the aorta, goes into the graft, bypasses the blockage, what's sitting there, and we get nice little artery flowing all normally. Number of grafts depends on number of blockages. What kind of grafts? They could be vein from the leg, which are blue in color. They could be arteries, which are red in color. Arteries are generally better than veins. I mean, there's lots to talk about, right? But we'll keep it nice and short. So basically, this is what a bypass is about. It's about creating a new channel for the blood to flow beyond a point where it could not flow initially. Fitness, we all talk about fitness. It's very important. When I go to the hospitals, I avoid the lift and I usually take up the stairs. And then at the end of the day, when I go up, when the nurses look at me, how are you, doctor? That's a common phrase here in Australia. We say, how are you doing? And I go, I'm breathless. Yes, I get a bit breathless, but I guess it's important. We need to be fit, we need to get breathless, and we need to get really fit, because this is the consequence of not being fit. If you're at low level of fitness and your risk is high, that is your lifetime risk. It goes up and up and up. And as we get older and older, as we get more and more unfit, as the risk goes up from having diabetes or smoking or blood pressure or cholesterol or family history, all those things we talked about, depression, even not having enough friends to talk to is considered a risk factor. If you're in a very sedentary job, that's a risk factor. If you don't laugh enough, that's a risk factor. So a lot of things happening. We have to be careful. Now the heart wants to do some exercise if it can. So cardiac rehabilitation. What is rehabilitation? It's just getting your heart back in order. So there could be something called primary rehab or a secondary rehab. You had no problems. You're looking after your health. That's primary. You had a heart attack. You had a stent. You had a bypass. Now you're doing rehabilitation. That is secondary. So if you see a large number of patients being studied, they did rehabilitation and they did about average of 24 sessions. Now they usually start a few weeks after bypass. You're not going to be running on a treadmill day 3, day 4, although you're quite active, but basically it's about entering into a program, talk about the lifestyle, talk about the diet, talk about the do's and don'ts, about the mind, about the heart, about the soul, a lot of things to be talked about, and start exercising. We know for a fact that there's a 34% risk reduction in the risk of dying over 5 years for all those people who have done cardiac rehabilitation. So it's not a waste of time by any standards. It's important. It is good. It must be done. It's very important. Now, stop looking at the lady there, but look at the important message there. The one who's sleeping, enjoying all the food there, versus the active lady there. It's important from the nurses' health study that exercise consistently reduces the risk of dying from heart attack, from stroke, from obesity, from every possible menace we get to be saved. And that's a proven study. It was done in nurses, not just nurses, doctors. So even doctors who exercise more than one per week, even more than one per week, one time per week, have a 20% less risk of having a stroke. That's really important. So it's time to sweat away, time to walk, time to jog, time to exercise. That's really important. I mean, I understand gym is difficult. I was with the gym. I had to drop my gym, but that's okay. We still exercise. My son is very keen. My son is so keen. He stimulates me to exercise as well. So it's basically a family affair. My wife exercises, so it should be all part of a family deal. We all exercise together. We walk along, we sing along, we run along. It's so important. It's very important. A little bit about the atrial fibrillation. We spoke about that. Let's not miss it. It's getting more and more important because we live longer, we suffer longer. We have to make it better. It has to be a healthy and happy trip, this trip of ours in our life. So this is what I showed you earlier. A little dome, a little spike. The dome disappears. We have atrial fibrillation. Many chaotic waves appear. That's atrial fibrillation. You don't need to by heart this. There's no exam you've got to give. What I'm trying to show on this slide is there are two things: the risk of a stroke on the left and risk of bleeding on the right. So if you're having atrial fibrillation, what we do is we assess, are you one of those who's more likely to have a stroke by not taking a blood thinner, or someone who's going to bleed by taking a blood thinner? It's all about a balance. So we look at a balance and we advise you, we discuss. We're not here to throw things onto you. We'll discuss, we'll form a family plan, we form a team plan and see what's the best option for you, to take it or to leave it. So we all generally say, the general dictum is it's more likely we suffer from having a stroke rather than from a bleed. Well, you could have a bleed, you could have a gum bleed, a nose bleed. Your hand may not look as pretty, you may get small little bleeding spot under the skin, I understand. But what is the other consequence of not doing it? A stroke. You don't want to have a stroke, trust me, you don't want to have a stroke. But then obviously we can discuss that. Everyone is different, everyone's risk is different. We can't explain that in one slide, in 1 minute, in 5 minutes, not possible. It's a long story, but we can discuss. So this is about what we can do. Now a little bit about new devices. For someone who just cannot take a blood thinner because they bleed, there are options available. There are devices available where we can put a tiny little device, which I'll show you next, where we can go in and put that device onto this area. This is the commonest area. This is the top chamber of the heart on the left, called the left atrium, which has got a little finger-like projection. And that thing, that white thing, the arrow points towards a clot. Moment we see, all of us gasp. We don't want a clot there, because that clot is not going to sit there. That clot is going to travel. It doesn't like to be sitting in one place idle. When we go idle, when we don't exercise, when we gain weight, we get atrial fibrillation. The clot doesn't sit idle. The clot moves, the clot runs, the clot jumps, and then that's what we have a stroke. So therefore, for the ones who can't take a blood thinner, we can definitely have options of putting a device blocking that zone and not letting the clot come out or go into the circulation. For some people, I'm specifying this, for some people, we've got our cardiac electricians. I'm a plumber, as I said to you earlier. We've got the cardiac electricians who can actually go into the circuit that's causing the funny rhythm called atrial fibrillation, and they can burn it, they can cool it. We do all funny things with the heart. But ultimately, the bottom line is the heart has to smile. We make it smile with a shock, or we make it smile with temperature, be it hot, be it cold, or we burn it. We do funny things, but we make the heart smile. That's our attempt. That's our need. So basically, this is what happens in different areas of the heart. We find the focus, we find the area that's naughty, that's creating a problem. We try to burn it, and we try to get the rhythm back to normal. As I said, it's too many topics in a short period. This is not for everyone, but this is one of the options for some people. So I spoke to you about that device. It's called a Watchman device. We give funny names. We have funny drugs we use, but the bottom line is to make us smile. So basically, this is the heart, the left ventricle, that's the right ventricle, separated by a wall called the interventricular septum. That's the right top chamber called the right atrium. That's the left top chamber. The right atrium and the right ventricle are married to each other, and the left atrium and the left ventricle are married to each other. The two go top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. And we all know when we fight with our spouses, we are in trouble. So when the top doesn't help, it doesn't squeeze, it goes jittery, that's atrial fibrillation. And when that happens, there can be a clot. So this is something I mentioned earlier. There's something that's quite new in advance. It's not brand new. We have done quite a few of them. Now we go into people called structural heart specialists. So you can see we have so many subspecialties within cardiology. We structural heart specialists, what they do is that we can put in stents and balloons. We are probably accessing every area of the heart. We're jumping in everywhere. So for, again, I specify, this is not for everybody, not for those who have mild disease, not for not for the ones who can have surgery done and fix it, but for some people, a small percentage, small population, there's an option of not having to open your heart, open your chest, and go from the groin and get that done. Now, this is a different kind of a device going through and through the heart. Most commonly, we don't do it like that. We go from the groin, go from there, put a device there. I can show you all these. I've got these models to show you once I finish the talk, hopefully not too long from here. Last topic, some of us are born with a hole in the heart, different kinds of holes. Again, as I said, difficult to explain everything in a short period, but there are options without surgery. We can close the hole in the heart. These are done by structural heart specialists as well. So there's something called PFO, something called atrial septal defect or ASD, a lot of things there, but a lot of things happening in the horizon. We can close these defects of the heart. We can get them better. Now there's one really brand new things happening. Again, not for everyone, small minority. We may even be able to repair leaky mitral valves with the help of clips. And it's done in all the hospitals I'm working at the moment. And there are specialists doing that as well. So we are definitely progressing in terms of technology, in terms of advances. Coming back to basic routine, everyone doesn't get to have stents. Everyone doesn't get to have valves. You don't need pacemakers, but what do you need is basically lifestyle changes. So let's go through it. Let's all happily look into it. Salt restriction, alcohol in moderation, increase vegetables, at least 1 or 2 fruits per day, low fat, reduce your weight, jog along, exercise along, advise yourself, your partners, your friends, everybody around to quit smoking. Do not be judgmental. Do not be abusive. I'm sure people understand kind words. I'm sure everybody understands the language of love and language of the heart. Speak it out. We'll help people. We'll get them better. So these are all important. Now, I said I'm a poet. How could I not end the discussion without a poem? So this is what we do. We're interventional cardiologists. What does it feel to function as an interventional cardiologist, treating angina, heart attacks, hypertension, heart failure, and rhythm twist? People with debilitating angina such that they can't walk, or feeling helplessly helpless, breathless, and can't even talk. Ailing hearts with worsening symptoms and mind in despair, hoping against hope, all their problems can have their repair. Loving elderly hearts waiting to see their grandchildren, young patients wondering what happens next and when. Heart disease can affect all ages and gender being no bar, leaves a lot of uncertainty in minds whether life goes that far. I feel privileged. I really feel privileged as a chosen one to attend to an ailing heart with empathy, give solace, and let them have a fresh kick start. Medicines, of course, help, and interventions do certainly cure. Can we ever replace caring attitude in this profession so pure? Treat with respect the individual, attack disease with skills, uplift patients' morale, and arrest this disease that kills. I know there may be occasions where I may fail. I may not salvage a few of them really, really frail. I'm just the instrument sent for service by the good Lord. Let him keep our profession noble and away from all fraud. Thank you very much for your kind listening. Let me quickly show you a few models of the heart, and probably seeing that may make it a bit better. Do I need to stop sharing the screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, done. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can, and then I will spotlight on you.
All right, let me quickly show this. Now, this is the heart. This is the left ventricle or the left bottom chamber. That's the right bottom chamber. That's the valve I was talking about. I'll bring it closer for you. That's the nice, lovely little aorta that comes out and gives blood from the heart to all the arteries of the body. These are the venous chambers, the veins that provide return of blood back to the right side of the heart. So left top, left bottom, right top. That's a balloon into the heart valve. That's one model. I've got windows to the heart. You can see the windows are openable. Not in the real life, but yes. And these are the arteries. So basically, this is what you look at. These red ones are the arteries, the blue ones are the veins, and they sit right on top of the heart. That's why they're called coronary arteries. They're like a crown to the heart, and different arteries, different angles. That's what gets blocked and causes a heart attack. Now, what are these wires? I'll show you some wires that we use to go and cross the blockage. They're like as thin as the thickness of hair. And what are the catheters that go in? These are real catheters which have been in market for a long time. They're different shapes. They go, this is the tip that goes right into the artery of the heart here. And this is through where we inject contrast or dye, which goes into the artery. And we have a look. This is the other end. This is from where we inject the dye and comes out from there. It fills the heart. And that's the length of the catheter. Half of it remains outside the body. Half goes into the body through the arm. For those who have had an angioplasty, they'll know what we are talking about. What are pacemakers? Pacemakers are these tiny devices. They are only used for improving the heart rate. So if somebody gets low heart rate or heart blocks or pauses, and if they need it, if there's no secondary reason for causing it, they are basically from degeneration or from medicines that are needed, we put in a pacemaker. This is the battery side of the pacemaker. There are two, some of them get one, some of them get two leads. The leads go from there. This sits right under the chest. Right on the chest, under the skin, and the dots, the points here have leads going on, and they lead straight into the heart, right side of the heart. That's where the leads sit, and the heart gets stimulated because of those impulses, electrical activity coming from the pacemaker. This is a little device which I just want to show you. It looks like a tiny USB device. These are devices called loop recorders, which we implant under the skin. It takes 15 seconds to put it under the skin. This is like a USB device, but it transmits your heart rhythm to the company, and then it can be actually emailed or texted to a cardiologist, and we see what's going on. So then we watch you, we watch your rhythm, and this is where we find out if people have got atrial fibrillation, if they have had a stroke and we don't know why they had a stroke, or if they have had, episodes of fainting and we don't know why they fainted, whether they had heart blocks or bad rhythms of the heart. That little device, if they put it, not for everyone, as I said, only for the ones who qualify to have it, that can pick up problems with who has it, who has a problem, and that can be sorted. Now, just one last little thing. These are these beautiful arteries you can see of the heart. That's how they branch off, and this is the aorta from where they arise. And last but not the least, if you cut these arteries into cross section and have a look. So this is how the arteries look. There are three layers: the outside fibrous layer or adventitious layer, the middle muscular layer, and the inner smooth layer, which is the endothelial layer. So these layers are normal, nothing wrong in this heart. This artery is the next artery that comes up. For a little tiny plaque, if you can see on one side, which is a cholesterol plaque. If people don't look after the heart at this stage, they go on to the next stage where the buildup becomes a bit more prominent. You can see it's trying to block off the artery. And if we wait for a little longer, it gets really bad. It comes to this stage where the arteries are blocked with the red clot inside. Now, the only problem is how long does it take from this level to go on to this level or this level? We do not know. And that's why the importance of this talk. You got to look after our health. Whoever needs treatment has to take the right treatment. Take your preventative steps in terms of getting the heart and start smiling straight from your heart. Thank you for your time.
Let's give a big clap. Thank you, Dr. Vishwanath. Before we formally thank you, I will request Mubina very briefly to complement what you said about the nutrition and the diet. Mubina, is she there?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
here between the
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for covering in a lot of details.
Thank you.
And I would like to share my screen now. I think I'm sharing the right
Yeah,
screen.
you can share. Yeah.
Yes. Do you see my screen now?
No, I'm not able to see yet.
The menu is cooking.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I did I did do that, but I'm not sure why. Because I have multiple screen here happening.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of fiddle around between them.
No.
Can you share that something is coming up?
That's funny. It should have. I have shared it. I think I've shared it, but I'm not sure why you can't see it. To me, it says it's shared. So let me call my son. Give me.
Okay, I'll start again, stop it, and you can share again now.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Now you can see. Yeah, you can see that. Mubina, your screen is shared now. Yeah. Mubina, we can see your screen now. I think she's gone to check, but I was able to share for her.
She's getting the fruits and vegetables for us.
I think she's cooking something nice.
Yeah, that's
Thank you. While she's coming, Dr. Valanju, would you like to say thank you to Dr. Vishwanath, please? Dr. Valanju? Is there Dr. Valanju? Can I see them? Can you hear me, Dr. Valanju, if you are there, please? I think I can see him. Dr. Valanju, can you hear me, please? Here, you have to unmute yourself, please. Dr. Valanju, please unmute. We can't hear you. You have to unmute. Dr. Valanju, you have to unmute, please. I can see that you are on mute. Now you have to unmute with the red button on the red, click on that, please.
Yeah,
thank you.
I unmuted myself now.
Okay.
Can you see me?
Would you like to thank Dr. Vishwanath while Mubina is getting?
Well, thank you, Dr. Vishwanath. I'm sorry you didn't hear what I said before. It was very, very informative and very, very nicely done. I loved your models. They are very, very nice. I think we used to say a picture is worth 1,000 words. A model is worth probably 1,000,000 words. That says a lot. But I think that was excellent, and you covered it very well. I liked the way you put the lifestyle changes, how they are very, very helpful no matter what stage of the disease we are in. and they are always going to be helpful. And that is very, very important message that you gave us today. I don't think I'll waste too much of our time. I'll get Mubina now. Has she stopped cooking now, or she's still?
Yeah, okay, Mubina.
But thank you very much. And thank you, Mubina, too, for trying to bring us some nice recipes. Our heart's going to be very, very thankful to you.
Okay, Mubina, can you?
Yes, I got it now. So I couldn't find the button for unmuting myself. So because I was full
Okay.
screen and got lost somewhere. Okay, so can you see my screen now?
Share.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
You can see my screen. Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. So my presentation is very short because in order to receive benefit from my talks, fully it's important whatever you learn, you should be able to remember and implement it. Otherwise, my talks,
sorry.
can you hear me?
We can hear you. I
This
can't
is
see
the-
the screen, but I can hear you.
Wrong screen.
Wrong screen, okay.
Yeah, it's the wrong screen. I can see the share, but it was there before, but it's not there.
We can only smell it. It's not seen.
I know. I had it before, so I can see that it's sharing.
Is it showing the right screen now?
No, it's not.
No.
So maybe you can just talk
Okay,
and not share.
just walk us through.
Yes, yes,
Just walk
please.
us through.
Thank you.
Why did you share the right screen? Yes, I'm sure.
Okay.
Never mind, just talk us through.
Yeah, just talk it through is all right.
Am I showing the right screen now?
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
the same one. All that we can see is cholesterol, blood pressure, managing diabetes.
No.
So these are nothing to do with diet. These are the things that we have to do to look after our heart. So looks like you are having problems with the slide.
Yes,
you
yes.
can
This,
just,
So is this the right slide now? The first slide? Is this the first slide?
well, I'll just see your Mubina Zandar, dietitian, nutrition,
Beautiful,
heart
beautiful.
health. That's all it is saying. If
Mm.
that is the
This
right
was the
one, then
Zoom
probably
screen.
you have got others to follow. Maybe that
Okay.
might be the right way to, yeah. There was an arrow there on the side, so if you like to just slide them.
yeah, we
Yes,
can
yes,
see that now. It's on.
I think there's
Come
a
on,
view
Mubina.
option at the
Mubina,
top.
we can see that.
Sorry.
There's a view option at the top. If you click
All
that-
right.
yeah.
So, because, you have to, like, whatever I talk about, you have to kind of learn and implement. It's not about just listening, and it's not about just awareness, what you should know. It's more about what my passion is actually being able to make a real difference in your life, being able to give you tips and tricks that you can actually take home and implement it straight away. So for that reason, what I've decided with Bijendraji, that I'll come along 5 to 10 minutes each time and share you few tips at a time. So it's not like just sitting and listening to one big pravachan and for the sake of feeling good about it and just feeling that I know about it. It does no good to anybody, just knowing. So I would really, what would make me really happy that whatever I talk about, and I won't give you too many things, just few tips and explain you a little bit about it. And what I really want you to do is actually start implementing it straight away, because that's what end of the day, that will give you results. Not knowing, not understanding, not worrying about it, but actually doing something about it. And that's my passion. So if I can motivate you, encourage you to start think about it, start actually implementing it straight away, one thing at a time. It doesn't have to be all or none. It doesn't have to be you feel overwhelmed. Oh my goodness, where should I start? Oh my goodness, I don't do everything right. Doesn't matter. Even if you can choose just one thing that you can implement today, and then promise yourself that over time, I'm going to learn and implement one thing at a time. That's all it matters. That's all it matters. So going back to a little bit of background on the heart disease. The heart disease is one of the #1 cause of death in Australia, as Dr. mentioned about it as well in a great deal. In 2018, 11% of deaths were result of heart disease. although there's not one single thing, as Dr. listed, there's a huge list of risk factors that that results into heart condition. However, eating right, staying physically active, and looking after your mental health are all important factors for a good heart health. It's a huge topic. There's a lot to be covered. Under each topic, diet, exercise, and mental health. It will take many sessions to cover all the important key points. Today, I'll share a few tips on how to reduce cholesterol. These tips equally apply to people who don't have high cholesterol. The same recommendations apply to keep your heart healthy as well. Learning all about what to eat and what not to eat is all good and well, but it won't benefit you until you actually implement it. So I'll share in bit-sized pieces. Now, okay, so these are the mainly 4 areas. I think I jumped ahead a bit. These are the mainly 4 areas where dietitian can help you build a strong heart and prevent heart disease. As well as if you have a current health condition, it can help you manage that as well. So today I'll talk about cholesterol, but some other day I'll cover blood pressure, how to manage diabetes. As Dr. mentioned, diabetes is a very high risk factor for heart disease. Exercise, I'll share a few tips today about exercise, but there's a lot can be done and learn about it. And lose excess weight and emotional health, I will share a few tips on that as well today. So for cholesterol, there are a lot of things you can do, but today I want you to just start with one thing. If you are a non-veg and if you can eat fish, I would really like you to start with 2 fish meals a week. Fish with high in fat. So like a tilapia, doesn't have to be salmon. It can be many other fatty fish, and you can actually look up on internet and say which fishes are high in fat. So it's a fat that we are after. So what the fish fat has, it has a omega-3 that actually increases your HDL, reduces LDL, which is a bad cholesterol, as Dr. mentioned, and HDL is a good cholesterol, and actually also reduces triglycerides. So when we increase, what the HDL does is actually stops LDL accumulating in the arteries, as Dr. mentioned about it as well, and how it can lead to atherosclerosis later on. So HDL stops that happening. So, omega-3 reduces LDL, the bad one, increases HDL and reduces triglycerides as well. For the vegetarian people who are who cannot have fish, either they can have a fish oil capsule if they're allowed to have it. If not, then the nuts are a great source of omega-3. Here I'm showing a walnut and the linseed, but apart from that, all the nuts are good source of omega-3. Now, a nut has another benefit. They are also high in protein. So for 2 reasons, as we grow older, protein is important because our muscles start to break down faster, and we need protein in our diet to maintain our muscles and build muscles. And especially if you're doing a rehabilitation program. So, and the variety is important. So I never go for, if someone tells you, okay, just eat one thing and it's going to cure everything for you, run away from those advices. It's a variety that you're after, because each food comes with unique vitamins, mineral, antioxidants, and the phytochemicals that are unique to that particular food. And if you choose just one food or a limited range, you're missing out on what other food has to offer. So although I'm showing just 2 items here on the photo, but you actually go for all the variety of nuts, make a powder of it, and the linseed as well, make a powder of it and add them in your meals. That's the easiest way to consume. You can add it in your cereal, you can add it in your meals. And it will give you omega-3, it will give you protein as well. Okay, and the next time, by the way, when I come, I'll ask you guys how many people actually implemented that. Okay, the next one.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mobina, and thank you, everyone. So is it okay that we'll have the questions? For questions, please raise your hand and unmute yourself, and you please mention, is it a question for Dr. Vishwanathan or for Mubina? So are there any questions now? Yes, Sunil J, you have to unmute yourself, please. We can't hear you.
Yeah, it should be all right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, a question for Dr. Vishwanathan.